In this video, I start off playing 2-5 cash at the Wynn, while also grinding a $320 tournament on my iPad, where first place is a WSOP gold circuit ring and $21,000. This video truly has it all, cash gameplay and tournament play. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Let me know what you thought. Let's go. In the very first hand of the night, there is a $10 straddle on under the gun, and the low jack limps for $10. We raise in the small blind with jack 10 suited to $60. The straddle and the limper both make the call. The flop comes quite nice, king 10-10. We flop trips with a decent kicker. Being out of position, I am going to start off with a check as I would with most of my hands. The straddle checks and the low jack limper ends up betting $100. This opponent is quite short, only about $300 effective, so this is quite nice. We're just going to make the call. The straddle folds and the turn is the deuce of spades. I check, and to our delight, my opponent slides the remaining $135 red stack into the pot. I call and the river is the ace of hearts. I show my hand, and as expected, we are good. We take down an over $600 pot. In the next hand, we have queen 9 of spades, and we raise to $20 under the gun 1. UTG 2 calls, and so does the cutoff. The flop comes queen 9-4, 2 hearts. With a flush draw and straight draw on board, we are not going to slow play this one. We bet $50 into about 60. Both players make the call. Thankfully, the turn is clean, the 5 of spades. I continue betting. This time I size up to 175. The cutoff is the only one to call this time. The river comes the 8 of spades. While the flush draw does miss, the straight draw for jack 10 does get there. Besides this, I also don't see much reason to bet, as my opponent should probably not be calling worse. I check and my opponent bets $200 into about 560. They leave about $300 behind, and for this price, I really just can't fold 2 pair. I make the call and see the bad news as my opponent shows jack 10 off. He's straight, right? Yeah. They stick around and get there on the river with the nut straight. Glad we didn't lose more than we did in this one. As I am grinding cash, the first film-worthy and huge hand of the tournament happens on the iPad. The hijack open jams, we call in the small blind with pocket aces, and the big blind rejams. We turn them dead and are chip leading with about 2 or 3 tables left. Stay tuned with more hands to come. In the next hand, I have ace 10 of hearts, and there is a button straddle on for $10. The under the gun player limps for $10. Middle position calls, and we raise in the small blind to $70. The under the gun player then decides to back raise to 170. The old limp re-raise. Everyone else in the hand folds, and it actions back to us. For only $100 more, I am not folding a suited ace. I make the call. The flop comes king 5-4. There's about 360 in the pot, and I check, and my opponent bets 150. Nothing to do here to this size but make the fold. He will later tell me that he had pocket jacks. Next up, we finally have a premium, pocket queens. There is an under the gun straddle on for $10. The hijack raises to $35, and we 3-bet on the cutoff to 100. Action folds back around to the hijack who makes the call. The flop comes ace 10-4. When my opponent checks to me, I could bet or check. In this case, I do decide to bet $70 into about 210. My opponent makes a call. The turn is the ace of hearts. My opponent can definitely still have an ace, so when they check to us, I decide to check back for pot control. If they check the river, I can safely assume that we probably have the best hand and can go for value. The river is the 3 of diamonds. This does not happen, however, as my opponent bets 240. I don't really see them having many bluffs here. If they had a hand with showdown value like a smaller pair or a 10 or pocket jacks, I'd really expect them to check here. For this reason, I do fold. I am not 100% a believer, but later on, I ask them as they are leaving, and they do tell us they had ace-king. Next up, we have another strong hand, ace-king off. We are only 6-handed in this one, and the button straddle is on for $10. We raise under the gun 2 to $30. The low jack calls, and the hijack 3-bets to 150. This is an older Asian woman and has been pretty quiet the entire night. We are pretty deep, so I decide to just make the call. The low jack folds and the flop comes king jack 9. 2 clubs. I check and my opponent checks back. The turn is the ace of hearts. With the ace of clubs myself, I'm really not too concerned about the flush draw. If my opponent had pocket kings, pocket jacks, pocket aces, I would expect all of these hands to bet the flop. Besides maybe getting called by pocket tens or pocket queens, I don't see much reason to bet this turn. I decide to check and my opponent checks back once again. Speaking of those pocket tens or pocket queens, the river comes the queen of diamonds. Both of these hands are now beating us. At the time, I didn't think I should go all 3 streets without betting, so I put out a small block sizing bet on the river for $100. If I get raised, I will obviously fold, but I want to try to squeak out some value from a 1 pair holding. Either fortunately or unfortunately, this does not happen as my opponent just makes the fold. I guess she was just tired of me raising preflop and decided to take a stand. Bad idea. Next up, we have King Jack of Hearts, a beautiful hand, and there is an under the gun limp for $5. We raise to $30 under the gun 1, and the big blind and the under the gun call. The flop comes 9, 6, deuce, 2 hearts. Action checks to me, and with a flush draw and so many good turn cards, I'm going to bet. I bet $60 into about 90. Oddly enough, the big blind min raises to 120. And even more odd, the under the gun limper ends up calling. I am certainly treading lightly here, but obviously not folding. I make the call for $60 more. The turn is a deuce of clubs. There is now almost $500 in the pot in what has been very weird action. This time the big blind bets 180 and the under the gun player makes the call. Now that this board is paired, sets now beat us and we cannot win, so we are gone. I fold, but let's see how this hand turns out. The river is the queen of diamonds. The big blind does not slow down and bets $200. The under the gun player ends up jamming all in for about $900. And the big blind folds. Under the gun will later say he had pocket 6s for a full house, which obviously makes sense, but really not sure what the big blind had. That was a weird one. In the last cash game hand of the night, we raise King Jack off on the cutoff to $20. Both the small blind and the big blind make the call. The flop comes 10, 10, 8. When the small blind and big blind both check to me, I think most of the time when I put any c-bet here, they are just going to fold, so that's what I do. I bet $25. Maybe a bit too large, but maybe not, as both the small blind and big blind make the call. The turn comes the ace of spades. Action checks to me once again, and with about $135 in this pot, can bet or check. I think my opponents can definitely have an ace as they can float this flop with ace high, so I don't want to bet. I just check back and pray for a favorable card. My prayers are answered as we see the queen of clubs on the river. We have the nut straight. This time the small blind checks and the big blind bets $100. I am certainly putting in a raise here and I decide on a size of $400. The goal here is to get called by an ace or possibly a 10. After reflecting, I don't really love my size here as my opponent can still have full houses. Hands like 10-8, ace 10, queen 10. I think it would have been better to go smaller and then fold if we got jammed on. With all of this said, no need to worry as the small blind folds and the big blind also folds. I played live cash for about 4 hours while grinding this tournament on my iPad and lost about $200. Time to take one last look at my stack and cash out and focus on the big money. Okay guys, we are literally walking out of the Wynn from playing cash to go home and stream this tournament. There are 2 tables left, 18 people left. We are first in chips. First place is 21K in a ring, gold ring. We already have 2. Let's get another one. See you back at the house. Let's get it. Before leaving the Wynn, I decide to time the drive home with the next break. We lose a flip, pocket 7s versus ace king. That was only for like 6 blinds, we'll live. However, we win a huge all-in blind versus blind, ace 10 versus pocket kings. We are still chip leading with 16 people left. Okay guys, we're in the car, break 30 seconds, it ends, and we're driving home. We end up playing hands all the way up until I am in the elevator to go back to my apartment. I end up getting ace jack all in versus pocket 9s and end up losing a small portion of my stack. Damn, we've lost like all of our past all-ins, which kind of hurts, but I mean, could have been worse. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video where I end up going home, live streaming the tournament, and winning. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. It means a lot. I'm trying to get to 10K subscribers. Let's go. Come on, hold baby, hold, deuce, hold.